Hello out there. Welcome to Your Next Mission video podcast. Today we're going to be talking about something that's important to everyone, your money. In fact, it's so important that this will be the first in a series of two shows about economics and personal finances. Robert Frick from the Navy Federal Credit Union is both an expert in personal finance and economics, and he has some tips and ideas that will help all of us. So stay tuned. Part one is coming right up.
Welcome to Your Next Mission video podcast, where we tell the stories of those who have served in the past and those who are serving today. From transition to financial wellness, VA benefits to mental health, we cover issues facing veterans, active military, and their families. Now here's your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army and co-founder of the American Freedom Foundation, Jack L. Tilley.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks to all of our veterans, service members, and families for your service to our great country. Now, before we get started, I personally want to thank our presenting sponsors, Navy Federal Credit Union, whose members are the mission, and Purdue Global, where you can start your comeback with additional sponsorship from Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Dental and Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Vision and USAA. Together, they make Your Next Mission happen. They love our veterans and families, and if you listen to the show before, I say it every week, we love them too. Today, we're going to be talking about personal finances and economics. In other words, money. And I'm happy to welcome Robert Frick, corporate economist with the Navy Federal Credit Union, who I'm proud to say once again is one of our presenting sponsors. Welcome to the show. A big shout out to the Navy Federal Credit Union for their continued support the American Freedom Foundation. So, Robert, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Great to be here. I've seen a lot of your previous shows. I'm excited I finally made the show.
Well, first of all, don't judge me on those past shows. Let me just start far. Hey, first of all, have a good time, and let's get smart about all the stuff that you're going to tell us about today. We got a lot to talk about, but before we do that, could you tell the audience, just a little bit about yourself? I know you have a long career, but maybe condense it a little bit, but give us some high points there.
Well, I was a business and financial journalist for 30 years. I worked for Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine, so I have a deep understanding of personal finances. I've been an economist now for over 7 years with Navy Federal. So one of the things I try and do is I combine the two. So I look at what's going on in the economy and I try and apply that to how I can help people with their finances.
Well, I'm sure you got a lot more of that. That's really, well, again, thanks for coming on the show. Robert, what part of the economy do you think most people are thinking about and maybe struggling with right now?
Oh, it's inflation. Inflation is the big burden that we all have to bear right now. Unfortunately, for lower income Americans, and lower income Navy Federal members that we're in close contact with, inflation is crushing, and inflation isn't easing up yet. So it's something that has affected lives, changed lives, caused people to make a lot of accommodations, moving at home, giving up a car, delaying plans. Inflation is the number one issue.
Yeah, I certainly can see that because I have two boys, two granddaughters, and now I have 5 great grandbabies, and more. I can see them struggling all. And you said, "Wow!" It's a wow for me because anytime they struggle, I got to try to help them. And there's so many people out there that are struggling that need assistance. One of the bad things I think a lot of people deal with rising prices by really using credit cards to get by. And I think that's, first of all, I think you got to be careful about that. But is that a good idea or a bad idea? I think I know the answer to that, to use your credit card for everything, I guess.
Well, you have to use your credit card if you need the money.
That's true.
It's not a question, I don't think, of good or bad. It's a question of necessity. But people, especially lower income people, have maxed out of their credit cards. There's a lot of defaults, rising defaults, so that seems to be slowing down right now. So, you do what you can. You got to get by. And unfortunately, people have gotten into this credit card cycle, which is going to take a while to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned, I don't know how I learned it, but years ago I learned that, if I used my credit card, I'd pay the bill off at the end of the month. I wouldn't let it dwindle. I think a lot of people, what they do is they just keep charging and charging and charging. And I know we're going to talk about that later. I think you just got to have a good financial plan and live within your means is a smart thing to do anyway. So, but to what degree do you think inflation was caused by the pandemic, lingering around for, the effects of that anyway?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I know. Most inflation was caused by the pandemic for various reasons, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which pushed up energy prices. Probably about 2 percentage points of the 9 percentage points we had at our worst was because we gave people all this money to help dig us out of the COVID recession. So that pushed up inflation to a point, but only maybe, let's say, 2 percentage points out of the 9. It was mainly COVID. It remains mainly COVID. And then there's a whole other topic that we can get into at some other point, which is housing and why housing is so expensive.
Yeah. Do you think the stimulus checks helped a lot of people, keep afloat? But do you think those checks also led people to make some bad financial decisions?
Yes, they did.
I think they did too. Absolutely. You got all that extra money, and all of a sudden they cut it off. Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's human nature. I mean, we're not monks, for goodness sakes. If we have that money, we're going to spend it and we're going to enjoy it, especially during a time of great stress, which COVID was. I mean, we lost loved ones, as I just mentioned. I did, and it was a sad, stressful time. And what do you do when you're sad? You tend to spend money to make yourself feel better. So there was a lot of that involved. Unfortunately, it's human nature that when you get into this pattern of spending, it's very hard to stop. And so we know from following our members that our members have kept spending at a higher level than they should because they still think they're getting stimulus, but stimulus dried up 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think the other thing is socially you want to stay involved with people that you're around. They got a little bit maybe more money than you do, so you don't want to adjust your life in it. You want to keep living the same life you was living before, and sometimes people just got to pull back just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they're either afraid or embarrassed to pull back.
Yeah, we're seeing it now, but only because people are so maxed out on their credit that they have to, so they're being forced to. But, the party went on through last fall with people spending beyond their means, but now things have dropped back to a more normal pace of spending.
Yeah. And you bring up an interesting point. You've been a personal financial journalist for a long time, I know, but how hard is it, and you just said it a minute, how hard is it to get people to live within their means?
Right. It's extremely hard. And I worked in behavior for a while. I actually worked for a big international finance firm. And so I know a lot about what motivates people. And the whole idea about retrenching is almost impossible. It's very hard to get someone to go from a higher level of living to a lower level of living. It takes a lot of either trauma or discipline to be able to do that. There are no good ways of helping people to do that except, and I know you had my colleague Thomas Rocca on, I think, in a previous show, and Thomas and I are friends. We talk about this a lot. One of the best things you can do is talk to a financial professional, and they can kind of bring reality to you and help change your behavior. But it needs you to actually be open to the idea of looking at your finances, and then there's hope. But if you're just going off on your own and just kind of stumbling through, not paying bills or overdue or overdrawn, it's really hard to change behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always thought they ought to put, I don't know if they do or don't now, but I always thought they should put financial education into our educational system, within our schooling system, within our country. Because what you do is you go through school, you get all that stuff, or go through college, whatever it is, and then you're sort of thrown out into the marketplace. And if you don't have somebody that's sort of instructing you on what you should or should not do, your
Right.
mother or father probably, you're going to be out there scrambling and just making a lot of bad decisions in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, I work with our teams that do financial education at Navy Federal, educating people for their finances doesn't work nearly as well as you think. If you're educated in high school, you're probably not going to need it for at least a few years. You forgot it already. The best time to educate someone about their finances is right at the moment that they have to make a decision, and then they'll listen to you. So one of the things we're doing is we're delivering just-in-time information and advice to our members, and that's far more effective than say, hey, go read 20 articles on our website about how to manage your finances. We target people when they need the advice, we give them the advice, they make better decisions. It's harder, but that's what works best. And again, as a behaviorist, I know that education is very hit and miss.
You know, but in some cases, I think it has something to do with age too. I mean, at 18 years old, I really don't care about my finances.
Right.
I'm just spending money as you know, I make a little bit, I spend a lot more. But as I reach like 25, 26, 27, maybe I'm starting to level out a little bit. So you think age plays a little bit of a difference in there too?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Although I will say, I'm in my 60s. I know a lot of my friends are about to retire and aren't spending. They haven't pulled in their spending yet. So there comes a time when you're getting ready for retirement that if you're spending too much, you got to say, all right, I got to dial back my lifestyle. So it depends on the person, but I absolutely agree with your premise that the older you get, the more the wiser you get when it comes to your budget.
I just say one thing before we take a little break here. But the other thing is, I grew up as a very poor kid. I didn't have any money. In fact, I remember going. I was thinking this before you came on the show. I used to go to school when I was in high school. I used to leg for quarters to get lunch money, and I wouldn't have lunch.
Yeah.
And so I got pretty good at legging anyway. So I think if you struggle a little bit at the beginning of your life, you see the importance of saving a dollar. And I think that was one of the things I probably learned as a young kid anyway.
Oh, I agree. And I think your parents can really help you understand money. Now, I didn't grow up poor, but we were not middle class, or maybe barely. Both my parents were teachers, didn't make a lot of money. Luckily, we lived in a pretty inexpensive place, but they were very frugal. My parents were very frugal. When my brother and I were asked for something, the answer was almost always no. And we get good presents at Christmas and stuff like that. We take one decent vacation a year, but their frugality was the thing that I remember most and really set the tone for my life. And I tell you what, it worked out great for them. When they retired, they had plenty of money. They traveled the world, but they had to really know the value of a nickel.
Yeah, it was funny you say that because my grandkids call me the no man. Because every time they want some money, I say no. but the problem is, I'd always tell them, hey, if you want to make some money, you've got to work to get it.
Yeah.
You got to cut the grass, pull some weeds,
Right.
Whatever it is. But money's not free, so you got to get out there and hustle and make a little money. But
Yeah.
I think I don't know if they understand it now because my wife, unfortunately, she says Grandpa don't really mean no. What he means is just the start of the conversation. He's going to give it to you, but he wants you to learn about it. So, hey, if you have, but you got to teach them at a young age. I think that's very important. Go ahead, Rob. You're going to say something.
I worked 3 years as a cook at Kentucky Fried Chicken through high school and into college, and that's how I made money. I mean, I didn't have any money to go on dates or even put gas in the car, and I didn't own a car. This is gas in my parents' car. So, trust me, I know what it means. Being a journalist for so many years, you take a vow of poverty. So, you know how to save and prioritize.
We're going to talk about that. Hey, you have some ideas that might help people who are struggling with inflation, especially middle income and low income families. And I want to hear about all those. But first, there's always a but first and everything. We have to do some business to attend to. So stay right there, Robert. We'll be right back.
Okay.
This is Your Next Mission video podcast with me, your host, Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major Army. And if you're enjoying this discussion, I know that you are, please like us. Click on that subscribe button below. And be sure to click on the bell to receive notifications of all of our upcoming video podcast releases. I'll be right back after this word from our presenting sponsors.
You're watching Your Next Mission video podcast, proudly presented by Navy Federal Credit Union, the most trusted credit union owned by members of the military community, serving all branches of the armed forces and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. And Purdue Global. You're ready for a comeback, and with Purdue Global, you can do more than take classes. You can take charge of your story, of your career, of your life. Earn a degree you can be proud of and get an education employers respect. Start your comeback at purdueglobal.edu. Now back to your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack L. Tilley.
Welcome back. We're talking about economy and personal finances. Robert Frick, corporate economist with the Navy Federal Credit Union. Before we get back to our discussion, I'd like to take a few seconds to tell you about a new program that we're excited about called Your Next Mission VCS, a Veterans Community Support Program. We'll provide personalized one-on-one support to address the unique needs within our veteran community, facilitated through our many partnerships with other veteran service organizations. Please check it out at yournextmission.org/VCS and enroll to participate today. Remember, we want to help you with whatever issues you or your family are facing, so please reach out to us. Sir Robert, things like inflation always hit low-income families hardest, but the middle class is suffering too. What can people who are struggling do to, really help themselves?
I'm going to give an answer which is kind of depressing, but is truthful. And the situation right now is inflation has been so pernicious, so heavy, that the prices of food, transportation is a big thing, owning a car, and of course, you know how hard it is to pay rent or to buy a house. So those are the big three, and those have gotten, those are among the worst things that have been affected by inflation. So what you can do, and when we look at our members, I don't ever recommend stop going to Starbucks or, get rid of Netflix or stuff like that. You can do a campaign and cut back on those kinds of expenses. And that's worthwhile, but it's big things that really matter. So in some cases, it might involve moving in with someone or having someone move in with you. It might be you're making payments on an expensive car that you need to get rid of. So there's a bunch of little things you can do, and there's the big things you can do. That being said, once you do those things, they still might not help, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel because the economy is shifting in a way that is going to make things easier for everyone, but especially for lower income people.
Yeah. All the time you was talking, I was thinking about myself, if I wanted to save money, what would I do? Like, I have Netflix. Maybe I'd do away with my Netflix. I have a guy that comes and cuts my grass. Maybe I'd do away with the guy that cuts my grass. I get my car washed, once a week or something like that. Maybe I do it every other week. So the little small things that I think that you can make adjustments. Going out to eat. Nowadays you go out to eat and you're, used to be out and spend, spend maybe $110 or something. And now you go out and you spend $300 or $400
right.
to take your family out to eat. So I think little things like that are things that you ought to take a hard look at. How to cut back in small ways to try to help you a little bit.
Yeah, and that's really important. You mentioned eating out, which is one of the things that people are doing a lot less of because as grocery prices have stabilized, restaurant prices keep going up. And we went out to lunch, my wife and I and two friends of ours, at lunch, and the bill was $180. And we didn't have drinks or anything. I mean, it was just outrageous. So you have to watch those things. Working on the small things is important. Sometimes they're not enough. And that's my point, that once you've done those, if they're not enough, don't give up. You have to think about big things. And sometimes those big things will make all the difference.
Yeah. And the other thing I tell you too is it's again, it's hard to cut back. You may get like you go to a store and you get the number one. I don't know. I don't shop. My wife does, but but I do push the buggy every once in a while. But when we go in there, she's looking for probably the best stuff. Where in some cases you ought to look at something maybe a little less expensive. That's a value to buy that particular product.
Right.
I think you just got to be smart about what you're doing, and I think some people have just struggled to do that anyway.
Yeah, we've made a lot of changes in buying food, and one of the things we love to do is grill flank steak. We marinate it. I get the grill nice and hot. I make a beautiful flank steak. We're not buying much flank steak anymore because even at Costco, it's expensive. We buy rotisserie chickens, right? And one rotisserie chicken, now our kids are out of the house, that'll last us for 3 meals. And it's not that we couldn't afford more. It's just that we hate spending so much money that we could be spending on other things.
Yeah, you just brought up something that's pretty interesting, leftovers. I used to just, that's enough, I'm finished.
Right.
Nowadays, you have leftovers, you'll seal it all up, put it in the refrigerator, and you may, maybe eat on that for a couple of days or whatever, depending on what it is, especially if there's only 2 of you.
I don't know how your wife is. My wife says she's going to eat leftovers, but I'm the one who always eats the leftovers. So there's a great Asian restaurant in Northern Virginia where we live, right by Navy Federal Headquarters. Just opened, fantastic, and the portions are huge. You can get 3 meals out of 1 dinner on that place. And I'll just eat it for breakfast, for lunch and dinner for 3 days. My wife will have moved on to something else. Now, she's frugal in other ways, but meals are really important to her.
Yeah, no, I perfectly understand. Hey, we've talked about the inflation affecting low-income and middle-income families, and I want to talk a little bit about that, retirees, right after we take another quick break. Now, here's a word from 2 more of the organizations that help make this show possible.
You're watching Your Next Mission video podcast, brought to you in part by Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Dental, Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Vision.
Part of transitioning out is that dental and vision insurance breaks off from your medical insurance.
Vision and dental is very important to be able to enjoy your retirement.
Blue Cross Blue Shield makes the transition so much easier.
And USAA.
A promise is a trust not to be broken, whether spoken with an oath or sealed with a pinky. And after 100 years, we're still taking care of the military community and their families. That's our mission, always.
Now back to your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack L. Tilley.
Welcome back. We're blessed to be here today with Robert Frick, corporate economist with the Navy Federal Credit Union. Remember, this is your show. We know there's so many issues that directly affect you, and we want to address each and every one of them. So please, as I said before, reach out to me. Tell me what topics you'd like us to cover. You can call or text me at 844-424-1134, or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org. And guess what? I'll actually reach back out to you. Robert, we've talked earlier about wages and currently rising at a faster pace than inflation. How will that eventually help people who are still working but are about ready to retire? People who are in that age group that's going to retire, like myself. How will that help them?
You and me both, brother. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, I think about it a lot. Trust me. What we've seen in talking to our members is that people who have retired in the last few years, who had the Social Security, maybe a pension, maybe an annuity, all lined up, that's going to pay for their expenses. Now inflation has pushed them underwater, and so now they're having to rethink. Maybe they have to get rid of a vacation home if they have it. Maybe they're going to have to go back to work. So there's been a big effect on retirees. Now, there's good news there if you collect a good amount of Social Security, because Social Security is indexed to inflation. So that's going to help a lot of people out. But it's been a shock, and it's just bad timing. It's much better to retire during a period of low inflation than high inflation, but you retire when you got to retire.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the fact of the matter, you can't. I don't. Unless you have everything set up and paid off and all squared away, I don't think you can live on Social Security, depending on
No,
how
no,
you
you
live at it
can't.
anyway.
No,
It's not enough money.
It's one leg of the stool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is a lot of people are working, even though they can retire at 62 or 65 or so, a lot of people are working a lot older, like myself. I'm going to just continue to work. Why should I quit working if the economy is sort of iffy and I need that additional money, not just for myself, but really for my family, my grandchildren?
Well, I think a lot of people are making that choice to work longer. And if you're blessed and you can retire when you want to retire, that's great. But retiring when you plan to retire, if your finances aren't holding up, is not a good idea, because it won't be long before you're realizing you're not paying your bills or you're not enjoying yourself. If you retire and you're not having fun, then don't blame yourself because of inflation, but you've got to get yourself back to a situation where you're not surviving in retirement. Retirement's supposed to be a time for relaxation. I know a lot of people who have retired and they went back to work, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to. But I know a lot of people who needed to. And that can be very stressful.
Yeah. I think the other thing is people don't think 20 years from today. They don't think 30. I mean, when I was 18, I certainly didn't think when I was going to be 55 or 60 or 70 years old. And I think, if you were smart enough, and I was just through dumb luck, I got to tell you this one story real quick, is when I was a young soldier in the military, and I'll never forget this, I bought a motorcycle. And I paid that motorcycle off, and my wife says, it was only like $50 a month or something like that. And my wife says, why don't we just keep paying that money to the bank for savings? And I'll never forget when I had $5,000 in the bank, I thought I was a millionaire. But it was a first step of really saving money.
Yeah.
And sort of look at the impact that you can have with a small amount of money. So if you start at an early age, and that's what I try to tell my grandkids, let's start saving a little savings account right now for you and start putting money in there a little bit so you prepare for the future. So I think, again, people just don't think that way, I don't think.
Well, that's what I preach to my kids. I have 3 daughters, early 40s, 30, 29. And whenever they make a little bit of extra money and they think it's a windfall, I say, okay, well, increase your 401k.
Yeah.
Now, I don't say put all of it in your 401k. Have fun with half of it and put half of it for the future. That is a tried and true technique that really works with how our brains work. Because if you make extra money and you're sad about it, that doesn't help you. But if you can do the right thing and save some, but also have fun, that works perfectly.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's what a great discussion this bit, and I certainly appreciate all that you do and you continue to do. In part 2 of our talk, which will be coming up, next week, we'll be talking about working with financial planners, and I think that's certainly important for all of us. Home ownership and how car ownership is different proposition than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Before we go, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience, or anything we missed, or anything that you'd like to reemphasize that maybe you want to share with the audience?
Big thing that's happening right now, which I think is going to be a game changer for so many families, is inflation has come down, interest rates are about to come down, wages continue to advance at a good rate. All those things together are conspiring to make the finances, especially of lower income people, better. So if people are getting discouraged right now, in the second or third quarter or third or fourth quarter of 2024, know that a year from now, things are going to be a lot better. They will be a lot better. So it's important to hold tight. And it's not going to be one morning you're going to wake up and there's going to be bluebirds of happiness singing in your bedroom and the sun's going to be shining through your window. But you will be better. You will be able to afford things better. Lower inflation, lower interest rates, higher wages. All those things have been working against us, and now they're working for us. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, just don't get discouraged and just say, well, I'm just going to go crazy because nothing seems to work. Next year, things are going to work.
Yeah, I think people ought to listen to you because I think there's a lot of people that are going crazy now, just struggling a little bit. Well, first of all, thanks for being with us today, and thanks again for the Navy Federal Credit Union for being one of our presenting sponsors. We say it all the time, but we couldn't get this done without them and without you. So we appreciate all that the Navy Federal Credit Union is doing and continue to do. So again, thanks for coming on the show.
We're grateful that you have us on. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thanks again to Robert Frick from the Navy Federal Credit Union for being with us today. I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, and you've been enjoying Your Next Mission video podcast. And thank you for joining us. Log on to our website at yournextmission.org and leave me a review. I always say I hope it's a good review, but if it's a bad one, I guess I could take it. While you're there, you can visit our nonprofit and corporate partners who have jobs and services available that can assist you in your transition from the military. And check out our job board in partnership with Recruit Military, where you can search for a job that's just right for you. Please go to the website to watch a video that will help fine-tune your search, where you can create your own personal profile there. You can follow me on all my personal social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, of course, Rumble. And if you like what we're doing with Your Next Mission, please click on that subscribe button below. And don't forget to click on the bell to receive notifications about our upcoming video podcasts. Don't forget, we want to hear from you. Please leave me a message or send me a text at 844-424-1134 or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org. Thanks again to Robert for joining us today. And as we're talking to Robert and listening to all the stuff and all the advice that he's given us, I think back when I was a small kid, and I've told this story before, and I'm going to tell it to you probably 10 more times. I grew up in a laundry room, just big enough for a single bed. And I remember picking my feet up and closing the door and turning on the light, and I had 3 shelves I'd put my clothes on, a little vent I'd look at. I only tell you that story is because I understand the importance of money. I understand the importance of living within your means. And I think it's important for all of us to understand exactly what that means for all. Everybody doesn't have $6 million, People don't have money to throw away, but you have to live within your means. You got to take care of your family. You got to take care of your kids. You got to take care of yourselves. And I tell you, when you struggle with finances, that just disrupts everything else in your family. So think about what you're doing. Each and every day, make sure you plan for the future. Thanks for watching, and thanks to New Mind Studios, and of course, our sponsors, Navy Federal Credit Union, Purdue Global, Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Dental, and Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Vision, and USAA. We appreciate all you do for our military. And as always, see you on the high ground. Hooah!
You've been listening to Your Next Mission, brought to you by the American Freedom Foundation. Learn more by visiting yournextmission.org.